Just like to acknowledge our partners on this series. So we've got Royal Life Saving Society Australia, Commercial Aquatics Australia, OTM Planning Group, YMCA Victoria, the Victoria State Government Health and Human Services Department, Belgravia Leisure, Cleaning Melbourne, VACA, Aligned Leisure, our Watch Around Water accredited facilities, EcoSave, and Western Leisure Services. Today is Swimsafe, Train the Trainer. And we've got a very, very special presenter today, myself. This is the first one that I'm presenting, so I feel a bit awkward introducing myself, but nonetheless, thank you everyone for signing in to have a listen to this one. It's an interesting workshop that we've delivered face-to-face, so hopefully that translates well into the virtual format, but we will sort of work through that as we go. Next week we've got in-water non-traditional exercise programs with Barry Harrison, who's the general manager of Aquapulse with Western Leisure Services. And then the following week, you've got myself again, aquatic risk management layers of protection. It's come through as a sort of my own feedback to myself regarding the sort of implementation of the GSPOs and risk management in general through the webinar series. Some of the questions that are coming through, that there's still a bit of a lack of whether it be information, resources, understanding of how to implement really strong layers of protection in risk management when you're implementing your supervision planning. So we'll go in depth on that one. So Swimsafe, Train the Trainer, welcome. So today, by the end, you should know how to access the Swimsafe resources, have a plan on how to train your staff on the Swimsafe campaign and what resources are available for this, understand some of the challenges and limitations to implementing Swimsafe as a public safety campaign, and beyond with some ideas as to how to overcome those challenges. Hear from industry, how they might have overcome challenges in the past or in the future, and you'll be able to develop your own action plan as to how Swimsafe will be implemented into your facility and systems of work. So just before we get into the sort of nuts and bolts of how to train your staff and those types of things, I thought it would be helpful to go through the some of the research and the background to Swimsafe and what it's about. Not everyone knows that information, so we'll sort of take a step backwards to take two steps forward. So we ran the trial, the final trial, at a number of facilities managed by Aligned Leisure, Belgravia Leisure, YMCA Victoria, and the City of Yarra. And I'd just like to thank them for their partnership in the development of the campaign. So a little bit of background. So there was 20 drowning deaths at public swimming pools in Victoria in the last 20 years. And between 2005 and 2005-06 season and the 2014-15 season, 28% of deaths in Australian public pools were from people that were born overseas. And we found that through that research that there were some swimmers in public pools who were deemed as higher risk. So non-swimmers, weak swimmers, those with physical impairments or disabilities, pre-existing medical conditions, and older adults. So there was a series of drownings in sort of 2014-15, and there was some coronial recommendations. There was two sets of coronial recommendations that came out of that era. And one was that swimming pools implement a system encouraging patrons to inform a staff member of their vulnerabilities before entering the water. And the other one was to explore the options and means for best communicating with patrons who have English language challenges to inform staff of their vulnerabilities. And I think it's really key. So the one of the pools where there was a drowning was a Melbourne pool. You've probably heard of it, Watermark. And the facility, one of the coronial recommendations was to implement this system of informing staff of their vulnerabilities. And they were given about, I think it was 60 days or something from memory. So if you think about going through a long research process to ensure that the campaign is effective, that it reaches a target audience, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, it's not a lot of time. And so it was essentially a marketing campaign that came together, but it at the time, it wasn't evidence-based. It was simply a response to coronial recommendations. So that campaign was the Are You a Non-Swimmer campaign. So if you've been to facilities nationally that are managed by Belgravia, they've rolled this campaign out nationally. So they rolled that out in 2016, and the components were that non-swimmers would identify themselves to staff based off of seeing the signage. They'd be given a white wristband. They'd be given some key messages, which is attend the pool with a friend or family member if you can, tell the lifeguard about your swimming ability, and stay in shallow water. So we did a year 1 evaluation and a year 2 evaluation of those resources. And if you want to write down these links, the contents of those evaluations are here. So there is a presentation on that evaluation at that link, lsv.com.au/wp-content. It's that first link, and then there's an article on our blog as well. If you just Google "Are you a non-swimmer? Lifesaving Victoria?" those 2 links will come up top of the listings. So essentially, what came about at the end of that year 2 evaluation is at the 2 facilities where we did the evaluation, which were in the council area where the drowning occurred, one at Watermark and Olympic Leisure Centre, which is Banyule City Council. There was an 8.3% recall rate for those resources, even when prompted. So asking the patrons if they had seen any safety messages. A lot of them referred to Watch Around Water, and there was only 8.3% that actually recalled this Are You a Non-Swimmer resource. So, and then Olympic, we got 0%. So no respondents recalled seeing the messaging. So something to learn there. And so what that prompted was LSV basically decided to fund and implement a research project to find a solution to these vulnerable swimmer drownings and to find a public safety campaign that we could hopefully, based on evidence, that would be more effective in reaching the target audience. And there's other research out there around other safety campaigns, particularly from the road safety field, and the key metric is around 30% for unprompted recall, which is no one's prompted them if they've seen a safety message. It's just they recall what it is, and then if you can get higher than that unprompted with a prompt, that's even better. So the aim was to test campaign materials targeting weak and non-swimmers. The objectives were to increase the awareness of water safety and the risk of drowning in a public pool, recognition and recall of key communication messages, intention of weak and non-swimmers to identify themselves as such to staff, figure out what the barriers and enablers are to reaching the target audience, and what the impact on pool staff would be. So step 1 was we went to a marketing firm to develop prototyping materials. And that went through sort of several iterations with some industry feedback based on sort of anecdotal feedback. And then from there, we went to a research company called Quantum, who do predominantly, focus group testing. And essentially what happened was a selection of target audience members, which is those with vulnerabilities, those from CALD backgrounds, those with disabilities, were selected from the membership base at Richmond Recreation Centre. And the initial prototypes were focus group tested against the target audience. So more or less, there was some positive and negative feedback. So the 5 tips that were conceived was positively received. There was they didn't like the images of the human hand. They wanted more sort of cartoon-like images, and there was a range of feedback essentially that informed the next stage of the campaign. So what then happened was we decided to go into a live trial of the campaign at 8 public pools. We chose 4 control sites, which meant that they had no materials put up, and 4 intervention sites, which means that they had the campaign materials installed. We used patrons and staff age over 18, which is what the campaign is targeted at. Water and Water is the campaign targeted at children. Posters, banners, brochures, and lanyards were used, and there was a patron questionnaire to evaluate the impact of those resources on them as visitors, and particularly those from a target audience. We also did mystery guest visits, which we didn't put in here, and I'll talk a bit about that later. And we did staff survey, a focus group, and one-on-one interviews as well. So this is the campaign materials that came about after the quantum research, and this is the campaign materials that you should have in your facility at the moment, and or if you haven't signed up, these are the campaign materials and resources that you would get installed at your facility. Some of them are quite large, so large reception decals that go right across the counter or behind the reception area or across the glass. It's called a repositional media, and it sticks to any surface, and you can peel it off, peel it back on. So it looks a little bit like this. We've got the pull-up banners. We've also got the A-frame and bollards that go in the deep water areas to say, remember, don't get out of your depth. And it's all centered around the 5 tips. So after a 12-week trial, we went back out and we evaluated whether the patrons recalled the message. So we had prompted recall at 70% and 76%. So a jump from sort of 8.3% in the Are You a Non-Swimmer to 70%, which is pretty big. And then this is the sort of comparison of the 3 evaluations that we did. So the year 1 Are You a Non-Swimmer, year two Are You a Non-Swimmer after 12 months of being implemented, and then the yellow bar there is after the sort of 8 to 10 weeks or so that it was in the Swimsafe facilities, the 4 facilities. That's the recall that we got on those materials after only 8 to 10 weeks. Weekend non-swimmers self-rated their knowledge of how to be safe at public pools as good or very good. So we had about 60% rate that. The feedback from patrons was 50% of weekend non-swimmers reported they would identify themselves to facility staff, which was significant improvement on the previous campaign. The previous campaign, because it had pictures of staff or pictures of potential patrons that might be at risk, there's some barriers to identifying because they thought it might be, that for whatever reason there were sensitivities around potential, fear of discrimination or things like that. So that was why the cartoons was a big part of the resources. So we had 29% of staff reported that people from the target audiences had asked them about the campaign. And then 69% of staff said that they were not asked about the campaign. So that could be that, for whatever reason, people didn't self-identify or they weren't from the target audience. But overall, 30% means that that's a lot of people that asked about that key safety message. 58% of the staff agreed the campaign had helped them talk about vulnerabilities with patrons, and there was 26% of staff had some constructive feedback, which is great. The 5 tips make it easier to communicate basic pool safety to patrons. Campaign resources prompted staff to strike conversations with patrons on pool safety. It gave them key messages, essentially. And the resources, so the lanyards and posters, invited questions to CSOs, which made it easier to talk about. So rather than having to sort of come up with that themselves. Some of the feedback was that there was a lack of suitable training at the time for the campaign messages among staff, partly in being a trial and it being a first, an industry first, as well as that implementation. I think we had 4 of the 4 sites, 3 had management changes over the 10 to 12 weeks, which is unfortunate, but definitely had an impact. The placement of campaign materials at the facility lacked appropriate judgment in some cases, so there just needed to be a little bit more thought put into where the materials went, and then a lack of investment in training and information became another hurdle. So the staff essentially really wanted more training and information rather than just getting a memo and the posters being up. They actually really wanted a little bit of a workshop, hence what we're doing today with you, hence why you're all here. And we've done some workshops in January just before the lockdown as well. So Swimsafe, it aligns to the guidelines for safe pool operations. So there is a compliance element to this, and we designed the campaign to make sure that not only would it be effective in achieving the research aims and the public safety aims, but also that it would be a compliant system. So supervision section 4, special consideration for vulnerable swimmers must be implemented. Planning for supervision of specific users, information, knowledge, and skills relating to the supervision work plan, supervision of older persons, supervision of non and weak swimmers, and supervision of people with disabilities. So Swimsafe satisfies the requirements of all of those components of the guidelines of safe pool operations. So what resources do you get when you sign up to Swimsafe, or if you've already got the facility? So obviously, there are all of the campaign resources that go up around the facility. So there is a sample installation plan in the manual. There are all the materials arrive at the site, and obviously someone has to go up and put them up in the right places. And there's some key guidance around where those should go, as well as a whole bunch of information, including the research background, et cetera, in the manual. So the manual is really the starting point. Whether you're a staff member, whether you're a manager, whether you are a health and safety manager for 40 pools, you need to know the manual inside and out, and it's well worth a read. The next element is there is a staff training PowerPoint. So if you are a trainer at your facility or you're a manager, there is a PowerPoint. If you're the only lifeguard there, or maybe you're a senior lifeguard and you've got only 2 other lifeguards there because you're a regional facility, you can take your colleagues through, or you can go through it yourself, the staff training PowerPoint. And that resource is available on our webpage. So I'll just show you, there is a little portal for Swimsafe. I'm hoping that everyone can see my screen at the moment. So if you are an accredited facility, you're given login information for this page. If anyone can just comment if they can't see my screen, I'm hoping everyone can see the screen. But there are PDFs of the posters and the counter stands. There's a registration form. You can order additional resources. There's the manual is in here, as well as the PowerPoint. And all of the research evaluations are in here as well, so that you can go in and if you want to know a little bit more about the background, you can find all of that out from here. Oh, and I've got to go back to the start of the presentation. Apologies. There we go. So all of that is in that little portal on the web page for accredited facilities. If you're not accredited yet and you'd like to implement Swimsafe at your facility, you can send an email to swimsafe@lsv.com.au and we'll send you a registration form. Likewise, the registration form is available on our web page. And because of the COVID lockdown, and obviously everyone's doing it very tough at the moment, particularly facilities, we are offering a 25% discount on these resources until December of this year. So now's a great time to take advantage of that. Okay. So in the manual as well, there is a self-assessment action plan, as well as a training session outline. So if you're taking your staff through the PowerPoint and or workshopping it with your staff, those resources are in the manual, and it does talk you through in the PowerPoint the key information, as well as the action plan or self-assessment is how you implement it in your facility. So if we were doing a live workshop right now, we'd go through that exercise together, but it's a great exercise to go through your staff. But prior to taking your staff through the self-assessment, go through it yourself. For example, it basically itemizes every step that you need to take. So does your facility provide Swimsafe signage at entry? Does your facility provide a Swimsafe program or program information on the website? Does your facility incorporate membership conditions that align with Swimsafe? Does your facility encourage older people to notify staff at the entrance if they have any pre-existing medical conditions, et cetera, et cetera? Is it has this been updated into your induction plan for your lifeguards? Is it provided in their manual, the supervision plan at your facility, et cetera, et cetera? So it goes through end to end all of the steps that you need to take, and it gives you a bit of a work plan as to how you can implement this really, really well in your facility. And it's a great starting point. It's also great to take staff through this because they'll have to go through the facility and identify where the remember to stay within your depth sign should go, and where the best place to put the resources are in the facility. And I think that just going through that process with the staff is really useful for them in applying a little bit of critical thought to the campaign. And then you've got a training agenda and training record as well, ready to go for your evidence later if you need to evidence training. This is an example of the sample installation plan. So you can go through that plan as well and work out where you should put your materials in your facility to get the best impact. And likewise, you can always give us a call as well if you've got any questions. We're more than happy to help out. And certainly if you're based in the metro area, if you've got questions, we can swing by as well to give you a hand in where things should go. There is also a sample communication template to send to your staff as well. We know that communication is a key hurdle in the campaign, and so in the manual there is a sample communication plan that you can send to your staff to give them all the right information in a digital format. So just to give you an idea of some of the challenges and hurdles that we've had as well with the program, we did some mystery guest visits of the trial facilities during the program purely targeted at Swimsafe and the implementation, and that was to evaluate how well staff delivered the messages. As we know, you can have all the right planning and have the right processes and a really, really well implemented process, but it's only as effective as the staff that deliver it on the day and as effective as they understand it. So it's really key that you run a workshop with your staff. It's really key that you take them through the self-assessment and that they understand what the key messages are. So some of the feedback from that mystery guest visit process was that an assessor approached reception, identified themselves as someone who could not swim very well. The assessor was aged over 70 years old and visually identifiable as such, and was thus comfortably within the target audience for Swimsafe as an older Australian. Reception staff discussed the Swimsafe program in limited detail. No material was provided, such as the How Well Can You Swim cards or the 5 tips leaflets, which were presented and present at reception. Questions relating to the assessor's swimming ability were addressed to a limited extent, so the assessor was under instructions to say that they couldn't swim very well. The receptionist was wearing a lanyard with the appropriate information, but this information was not used or provided to the assessor. Materials were cited as being available at reception. No information identifying the assessor as a weak swimmer was provided to the assessor's knowledge to the on-duty lifeguard, and the assessor approached the on-duty lifeguard questioning what the Swimsafe banners and materials were about. The on-duty lifeguard referred to the lanyard he was carrying and detailed the program, so that was really positive. Later in the assessment, the assessor approached a second on-duty lifeguard questioning about the materials and was informed that it related to the Learn to Swim program for weak children swimmers to get them involved. This second lifeguard was not aware of what the 5 tips were or what the program was about. The second lifeguard said the assessor was the first patron to request this information. So there was a recommendation there that all staff are adequately trained to ensure consistent delivery of the campaign messages to the target audience. Neither lifeguard did provide the How Well Can You Swim card to the assessor or any other leaflet or resource which had been provided to facility management, and the staff did not proactively engage with the assessor. The assessor had to seek them out. At the second facility, very similar feedback. all 4 facilities were assessed, and it was more or less the same messages. So reception, probably due to the nature of their roles and the amount of different types of customers and queries, going to the gym, going to group fitness, going to the pool, that there was a little bit of a disconnect from the water safety messages side of things. Whether that's Watch Around Water or Swimsafe, it's really key, or COVID-19, it's really key that the reception staff provide safety messages first. It's not just about getting people through the doors and get as quickly as possible. It is also about ensuring that they have a safe visit to the facility, and that is number 1. So that was a key item. Some of the lifeguards were really across the program and really engaged with it, and others weren't. So there was messages not getting through. Having been in that space as a lifeguard myself, a duty manager, a supervisor, a team leader, coordinator, manager for a number of years, I know that someone can be away, they come back from leave, they go out and do a shift. It's really key that you have systems in place to ensure in-service training, especially if people have been away, and that there's a system in place that prior to their very first shift, any changes to organizational processes or campaigns that have been introduced or new processes, that staff member is inducted on that. Really, really key. No one should be out of the pool working without having been inducted on key safety messages and key programs. So something to note, and really important, that if you are implementing Swimsafe at your facility, don't just put the posters up and hope for the best. Train the staff, take them through the PowerPoint, take them through the manual, take them through the workshop activities. So the other activity is a role play scenario. So this is to help them engage with, it's not just about science. There are people out there coming through the doors that you need to connect with the key messages. So these are the scenarios that we put in place. So it's a 27-degree day. Giovanni's decided to take his granddaughter to your facility to cool off. It's Giovanni's first time in the water for several years. As his children are now adults, as he has recently retired, he has the flexibility to spend more time with his grandchildren. Giovanni isn't a strong swimmer and has been afraid of deep water since he fell off a boat as a young boy. As a lifeguard on the pool deck, you notice Giovanni is hesitant in entering the water with his grandchild. How do you manage this situation? So how many times would granddad or grandma come to the pool with a toddler, and they might be given Watch Around Water information because you're thinking about the toddler, but no one's necessarily connecting Giovanni is also a high-risk user. The older Australian is also a higher risk user, and connecting them with the right safety messages as well will be key. So there's this little bit of a shift that needs to happen in the facility. So you're looking at every user and identifying whether they fall into a high-risk category. Are they a non-swimmer? Are they from a cold background? Are they pre-existing medical conditions? Older Australians? Disabilities, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So having the information about the target audiences. We've got Addie. Addie's new to the area, never swum before. So taking the staff through that type of scenario. This is right in the pocket of known drownings in Melbourne. And then Jim, who's recently been in a car accident, just coming back to the pool for the first time. So ultra high risk. He's never had to use the hoist before. His circumstances have changed dramatically. So giving the staff a scenario that they can then apply to real life situations. A as well. A's an international student. She's coming to the pool. I know there's not a lot of international students at the moment, but they'll come back eventually. She, A seems to struggle with her goggles for quite some time, and is looking around, looking confused. So, there's a few little red flags there for staff, and just working them through with the staff that maybe this person should be approached and asked how well can they swim. Give them the 5 tips. Christine as well. So Christine falls into the vulnerable user category as well. So essentially, if you're to look at what the components are, it's displaying the information, making sure the staff can identify vulnerable patrons, and that they can communicate key information to those patrons. So it's actually not that complicated, but you do need to work through it with the staff. If there's anything that we've learned is that they need a little bit of contextualization to the types of users that it might apply to, and then also to the environment that they're working in. So in terms of this particular workshop here, you should now know where you can go to get the resource information. You should now know the research basis of the campaign and the journey of where it came from and where it's arrived at. You should be able to see that Swimsafe will save lives if your team implement it well. And you should know how to implement it in your facility based off of the install plan, the staff training, and some of the key challenges and hurdles that we've discussed. You can use the self-assessment in the manual as a to-do list and to formulate an action plan to implement it really well. By the time you have worked through that process, you will be so confident and comfortable, not just in Swimsafe, but program implementation, because it really is a roadmap to implementing any type of program in a facility and getting that staff buy-in. You can empower your staff through quality training and good communications to be able to deliver the Swimsafe messages to your members and guests. So on that note, I might just end us there on the Swimsafe information, and I'll just throw it out to questions. If anyone's got any questions out there, I'd be happy to answer questions and or take you through the website or anything like that. I don't have anyone posing questions at the moment, but feel free to do so. I'd love to hear from you. And I'll just give it a minute here. While I'm waiting for anything to come through, so you would show the conversation icon in the center of your screen and drop a chat in there. While I'm doing that, I'll take you to the Swimsafe part of our webpage. Hope you can see that there. So this is the component on our webpage. It's under pool safety, Swimsafe, and there is the information here. So it's a little bit of background, what the 5 tips are. There's a member resource area, which is what I showed you before. That's how you get to that. This is the facilities that we currently have accredited. So we've got about 100 facilities currently accredited, and we're really pleased to partner with all of those facilities. It's been implemented in a lot of facilities. If you're on here today and you work in one of those facilities, welcome, and be comfortable and confident that you're delivering a research-based campaign that will save lives in your facility. If you haven't registered, this is how you register. There's a little form. Make sure you register. There is an FAQ here as well. So who are vulnerable patrons? What should I expect to see in the facility? What messages will staff be communicating? Why has LSV introduced the campaign? What are the key risk factors? And then the evaluation report. So all of the research that's gone into it is up on the webpage there. And then the alignment to the GSPO as well. So if you're listening right now and you're a supervisor at a facility and you don't have Swimsafe and you need to go and talk to your higher ups about why you should implement Swimsafe, you must have a program like Swimsafe to comply with the guidelines for safe pool operations. So there are probably a couple of programs out there. You know, some facilities have developed their own resources, but you must have resources targeting higher risk users in order to comply with the guidelines for safe pool operations, which are sort of deemed by WorkSafe to be what is best practice in our industry. So that's what the information is. If you need to make a little bit of a business case, obviously there's the OHS legislation change that comes into effect in 3 weeks at the start of July with corporate manslaughter, which is any death in a workplace will be investigated in the first instance as a corporate manslaughter. So it's a really good time to make sure that your compliance system is watertight, and this is one element of a robust layer of protection risk management system, which we will talk a bit more about in a couple of weeks. Sheila, only one comment. Sheila, thank you. Thanks for listening. It sounds like we don't have any questions, which is unbelievable. But it must be a really boring message, or it's been very comprehensive. Thank you, everyone, for listening in. If you do have any further questions, you can email any questions about Swimsafe to swimsafe@lsv.com.au. If you need any further information, happy to take phone calls. We've got Lisa Gates signed in at the moment, who is the coordinator of pool safety. Lisa's a Swimsafe champion and an expert on the key messages. Adrian's signed in as well. He's our pool safety specialist. More than happy to take questions, and obviously myself as well. So if you phone that pool safety line, you'll speak to one of us. And we love talking about Swimsafe. We love talking about water safety. We love talking about washing the water and boring audits and things like that. But we are really nerdy and really good at what we do, and we'd love to help anyone who's got any questions about pool safety and driving that sort of message in their facility. No more questions coming through. We've got a few positive comments. Thanks, David. Thanks, Bruce. Much appreciated. And I hope you guys have a wonderful week. Obviously, a lot of pools are opening up this week and today. And as of the 22nd, there'll be another wave of openings as people open their gyms as well. We wish you the very best. If there's anything we can do to help, let us know. And enjoy the beautiful weather today, everyone. Take care.